Let's devise an assumption for February 7th, 2025. And today we're going to look at one of Friday's potential entries following bearish DEVISE clearance at about 1:30 p.m. So if you have not seen one of these videos before, I encourage you to check out my newsletter at retailtrading.com. You can find all the resources there, so you can see a write-up of what I'm talking about here. DEVISE is the entry criteria I use for futures trading in ES. I only trade ES, and I trade it using this DEVISE clearance. So what does DEVISE stand for? The D stands for divergence, the E stands for exhaustion, the V stands for volume, I for initiation, S for sponge, and E for excess. And like I said, we're looking at Friday, February 7th at about 1:30 p.m. And I'm just going to run through it, starting with, of course, divergence. So I want to direct your attention, if you see my mouse here, to this row, the CVD. That stands for cumulative volume delta. And really all cumulative volume delta is the difference between the bid and the ask. So when it is negative, that implies that the sellers are in control, and when it's positive, it implies that the buyers are in control. Again, in all my newsletters, I mention this. I link a longer article, so you can go check that out. Yeah, when I'm looking at the CVD, I do not look at it in terms of I don't look at it itself for an entry because I do not think it's very useful. You can very often see days where cumulative volume delta goes down all day and we're buying, or days where it's going up all day and we're selling. Yet I do like to look at it for that divergence component. And on Friday, the divergence occurred, so we have to go back to 1120 here. So keep in mind we're at the 6072 to 6075 area, and that CVD, we really only need to look at the first few here. So 2209 to about 763, but really 2209, 1831, 1831 being the most important as we pierce that 6072 level. So as you go back in the day, the last time that you pierce that 6072 level is at about 11:20 a.m. and the cumulative volume delta there was 1,474, 1,465, 786. So again, when we revisited that level later in the day, you had that higher CVD. So price itself obviously makes a lower high, excuse me, CVD itself obviously makes a lower high as price made a slightly higher high. So again, I'm just going to go back one more time to reinforce this. Price pops 6072, making a higher high relative to 6072. You go back to when it did the same thing at 1120. CVD is at 1,465, 786 as it pops that level. So it makes a slightly higher high here at about 105. That 1 o'clock first 30 minutes at 1 o'clock hour. Obviously, these times are all in Eastern. And yeah, so again, CVD diverged because it made a lower high as price made a higher high. Now, I just want to point out that I prefer hidden divergences when it comes to any type of divergence, be it RSI or CVD. And what a hidden divergence is when price makes a higher high and CVD makes a lower high. Yet you still had that divergence, and that's just one component of DEVISE, and so it qualifies. So moving on to exhaustion. So aggressive buying occurred as price pierced that 6072 area. That is about 6050 SPX. That's where that level comes from today. That's an important level for obvious reasons. If you've been watching ES at all, and if you've ever traded SPX, you know that those 00 numbers and those 50 numbers are magnets. So aggressive buying occurred as price pierced 6072 at about 1:05 p.m. And then you see a burst of delta, which disrupted seller absorption. So that burst here, as you can see, those green horizontal bars, the darker red and darker green bars, that is that delta that I'm talking about there. And just to overview real quick what delta is. Pull it up here for you. So again, keeping it simple, there's an article that I linked to in the newsletter, but really it's an order flow thing that allows you to see imbalance. So let's see if there's a quick definition here. I can keep it simple. It's not showing. Delta is bid minus ask. So again, it's similar to CVD, and that's just showing you which side is more aggressive, the buyers or the sellers. So I actually need to fix this article. So you can go read that article to the newsletter retailtraining.com to get a longer description of it. Like I said, I need to make a glossary just to simplify these terms. But it's bid minus ask. So what that means is sellers minus buyers equals a number. If the number is lower, it means the sellers are in control. If the number is higher, it's buyers in control. Not rocket science, so I'm not going to bloviate this point here. So you saw the burst of delta that disrupted the seller absorption. Volume then tapered. So volume is this bottom column here. You see that burst, 10,000, 8,422, 8,319, 9,081 starts to taper here. 8,156, 8,923. Okay, so that's that taper I'm talking about, is where you see that big burst of volume, but then price spends, in this case, about 30 minutes trying to follow through and is unsuccessful. So that's the E. Moving on to volume. Sellers continue to step down to sell the bid, then reload the ask until deploying aggression at about 1:40ish p.m. So it's actually 1:35. Let me change that to 1:35. So say at about 1:35 p.m. That's when you saw that aggression. You saw the aggressive buying here again. The green horizontal bars here are though that aggressive buy delta. You saw buy delta in, sell delta out, buy delta in, sell delta out, buy delta in, buy delta in, one more big push, and then you start to see big aggressive bar here pushes through all of it, and that is what I'm talking about when I say aggression. So that's a delta gradient. When I say delta gradient, again, just looking at these bars, you see the widening candle here. So that's showing acceleration of price velocity, and then finally you have a 4-bar fractal confirming that reversal. So what is a 4-bar fractal? Let's count bars 1, 2, 3, 4. Close of bar 1 is lower than the low of the previous bar, check. The close of bar 1 is lower than the low of 3 bars back, bar 4, check. And that's what I mean when I say a 4-bar fractal. So that's the V. So we have divergence, we have exhaustion, we have volume, initiation. Initiation is the easiest one. It's just price making a higher, higher, lower, low. In this case, we are looking for at a sell signal. So price makes a lower low, or sell clearance. I hate the term signal because that makes it sound like it can be automated. It's very tough to automate anything in day trading. So we'll call it clearance. So anyways, price makes a lower low. It's rejecting that 6072 area by about 0.25n. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to see it fleeing away here. And so maybe let me just proceed a little bit into the future here. So maybe wait something like that. So you want it maybe a little more clearance. At 3 points would be about 0.25n on Friday. So you can see the N number at the MGI document. Again, go to the retail.com newsletter for all those resources. It's also on my YouTube channel, if that's where you're seeing this. But anyways, let me sure. What was that? You okay? My dog was sneezing weirdly. I digress. All right, so yeah, so that's the V. So that's showing you strong momentum. S, sponge. Going back to absorption, absorption occurs when price pauses in an area of high liquidity and volume. Again, we've covered how this order flow activity is demonstrating that high liquidity and volume, and in this case, it's a bearish sponge occurring at a key supply level. So despite the high concentration of buyer delta, aggression, sellers reinforced the offer. This suggested that price was uninterested in further upside exploration, and the sponge is also visible here with a tight cluster of candles. So finally, excess. Weak excess here. We're in the middle of the profile, so we'll call it micro S excess. And I really wouldn't necessarily include this as part of that DEVISE clearance. Yeah, I just want to point out an important component of excess is wicks. So you see those wicks near the level. As the level pushes through, the wicks are on top here, and that is a confirmation of potential excess. And that is an example of a bearish DEVISE clearance that we saw on Friday, February 7th, starting at about 1:30 p.m. That's when you got the clearance. and beginning, like I said, when we went through the level at about 1:05 p.m.